The Activating Man is an award-winning supernatural thriller starring the late Tony Todd in his final lead role. The film follows Ors Gabriel, who, after losing his beloved dog Louie to cancer, begins seeing terrifying visions of a menacing entity known as the Fedora Man. Has Ors' mind fractured, or is this all actually real? The Activated Man also features an ensemble supporting cast, including horror icon Kane Hodder, Sean Young of Blade Runner, Andrew Keegan of 10 Things I Hate About You, Sab Shimono of The Shadow, and Vladimir Kulich of The 13th Warrior. The Activated Man opens in select theaters on December 13th. It also comes to digital and on demand the same day. Learn more and follow the film at The Activated Man Movie on Facebook and Instagram.
And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth.
In each episode, our special guest brings up a movie or a television show that traumatized them as a child.
This week, our guest is Toby Jones, a fan of the show, which is so cool, but he's also, more importantly, the writer and director of the upcoming film AJ Goes to the Dog Park, as well as a writer on popular shows such as Regular Show and OK K.O. Welcome to the show. We are so excited to have you here.
Hello. Excited to be here.
We're very excited to chat with you. I cannot wait to dig into your choice, but we'll get to that later. So let's start off with AJ Goes to the Dog Park. Can you? It sounds from what my digging on IMDb, it looks like this is based off of like a cartoon animated movie that you did back in early aughts. Is that true? Is this like a continuation of AJ Goes to France and the other ones?
It is part of, I guess you could say, a tapestry of situations where I take my friend AJ, who's just a real guy who I know, I grew up with in Fargo, North Dakota, and put him at the center of creative projects. I've joked that I kind of see him as like my Antoine Doinel analog, where it's just like at various phases of my life, I like to make a creative project around a version of the AJ character. And so, yeah, in high school, we made like a movie over the summer. We were graduating, called AJ Goes to France. All of us together, like that. And then I made a animated short for Cartoon Network with a version of an AJ character.
That's cool.
In the early 2010s, and then another 10 years passed, and I went and I decided to get the band back together, all of my friends from Fargo, North Dakota, and make a new AJ project.
Yeah, so can you tell our listeners a little bit about AJ Goes to the Dog Park and sort of like the inspiration behind this particular story?
Yeah, AJ Goes to the Dog Park is a surreal and gag-driven movie about my friend AJ. It's based on his life, sort of. He does have dogs, and he does work as a technical consultant. But it's just like an absurdist comedy, and the inspiration just came from, like, you know, a thing of like, I want to make a micro-budget movie with my friends in my hometown, and thinking like, what do we have access to? Well, what has changed in my friend AJ's life since the last time we made a movie about him? Well, he has dogs now. Very basic starting point, and that was kind of where it came from. Is it's like, well, these are his dogs. What do we have? What can we show? And it kind of started from there.
Okay,
cool.
So I'm kind of curious about the animated aspects of it, whether it's traditional animation or the CG, or towards the end, without giving anything away, is there stop motion?
Yes.
Is that okay? I was so excited when I saw the stop motion, particularly with what they were, because of my obsession with the early like Sinbad movies and all of that kind of like. So I'm kind of curious, how did all of that kind of come together for the animation, the CG, and the stop motion?
Sure. I mean, yeah, you could kind of call the movie, it is a live action movie, but there are a lot of, I guess you could call them multimedia type of elements. It's kind of it's a very handmade type of project. And so we're kind of using everything but the kitchen sink to get our ideas on screen with our complete lack of any budget whatsoever. And so, yeah, without spoiling it, the movie does have a surprising sequence, I guess you could say. And a lot of the effects in that sequence were created by my friend Owen Dennis, who most people know as the creator of Infinity Train.
Oh, shit, that's cool.
Yeah, and so, look, we both collaborated on all kinds of projects, and so when he heard that I was making a movie, he got very involved, and so he's like a producer on it, and all the digital VFX throughout the movie are him, and then he took it upon himself to you could say take that sequence in the movie and make it his own, and so there are a lot of there are a lot of all like, for example, there's the stop motion and the puppets and all of that stuff are and the models and stuff. Those are all him. And so there was even a point where like we were shooting the climactic sequence. There's a climactic sap fest sequence in the movie that's live action. While we were shooting that, I was getting photos and videos from LA of the filming of the sequence in question, the effects driven sequence. So it was a whole like crazy thing going on. And that was a sequence that, again, not to spoil it, but it's something that was maybe scripted as a page or two of material of a crazy thing happening. And Owen continued to embellish it until it became the thing you see in the movie today. And we worked together to create a hopefully very surprising moment or series of moments.
It was definitely surprising, and I was like, my jaw was like on the floor. I was like, this is an amazing finale. I was like, this is fantastic. So that's so amazing. And I also wanted to point out you mentioned the models. There's a lot of miniature work in here, and I loved it. It's like it brought me back. Watching this brought me back to my childhood of watching a bunch of stuff that had either stop motion or a lot of miniatures, a lot of that kind of model usage. So I was like, this is right up my alley.
Yeah, I'm very happy with how those elements turned out, and they help to kind of clue you in a little bit on the tone, of the movie, where it's like it's like kind of an unreal, dreamlike universe. And so from the beginning, you start to see some model shots, and hopefully for some viewers, that kind of gives them an idea of what type of thing they're in for.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I would say so.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and so you work on a lot of animation. Do you animate yourself, or do you just write for?
I'm not personally an animator, but I've worked on many animated projects I started on regular show as a writer and board artist. And so that's a storyboard driven show. And so it's a thing where you draw the storyboard and you write the dialogue at the same time. So you kind of write the jokes and draw the characters. And a lot of like Cartoon Network shows from that era were that style where they're storyboard driven. And then after that, I worked as a co-executive or an executive producer on OK K.O. Let's Be Heroes. So I was the number 2 on that show, running it with my friend Ian Jones-Cordy, kind of executing the episodes from conception to completion. Yeah. And so while I'm not an animator by trade, I came from film and comics.
That's amazing.
And so I was able to find a place in the industry and build a career out of it, which I'm very grateful for.
That's so fucking cool.
I was going to say, because you were mentioning the storyboarding, and I'm like, what you were describing there sounded like comics, like trying to draw the art as while working on the dialogue as well. So like, you said, is that kind of some of your background too? Is the comic side of things?
Yeah, for sure. I went to art school. I went to the Minneapolis College of Art and Design, and where I studied filmmaking, but I made a lot of comics and zines on the side.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, and there were a lot of like pathetic autobio zines about how miserable I was, oversharing and very uncomfortable but funny type, that type of autobio indie comic, Yeah. And I was doing a lot of that stuff after I graduated. I graduated into a recession and couldn't get any creative work at first, and so I was just hawking my zines and trying to get films made, trying to like apply for grants.
Yeah.
But it's like you're applying for grants and you say my movie is a gag-driven comedy. They're like, I don't give a shit. But fortunately, this was around the time that Cartoon Network shows were starting to kind of draw from different areas for talent, and so Adventure Time and Regular Show were very early people who were starting to bring on indie comics talent because they wanted people who could write a certain type of joke, that they were having trouble finding while still being able to draw. And so I was able to get on because they liked my samples, and they were able to JG was able to kind of get that my very weird sense of humor was maybe compatible with the humor of Regular Show, and brought me on, and I was able to learn to storyboard on the job because they wanted to have my jokes and writing on the show. And then storyboarding is something I've done. The language of storyboarding I learned. It was very difficult to learn, quite different from the language of comics. But then I've been using that skill ever since, of course. And of course, AJ Goes to the Dog Park, I storyboarded that entire movie. And if you like watch it, you can notice maybe that it's actually staged moment to moment, a lot like one of those 11-minute cartoons, even down to like the intentionally flat staging of the characters all standing in a line, stuff like that.
Okay.
It's all very...
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Yeah. It's based on like the visual vernacular that I learned from working on shows like Regular Show about like what is the clearest, cleanest way to execute a visual joke,
That's so funny because like before I had even looked into like what you had worked on previously, like this feels like a Cartoon Network Adult Swim thing. And then when I saw your background, I was like, oh, well, that makes a lot of sense. Like it makes a lot of sense. And it's a good thing because I love that like absurdist style of things. And I was like, so it all kind of coalesced and made sense. Before I ask about how you got into the genre, though, are those AJ's real dogs in this movie?
Yes, those are his actual dogs. They're actually named Diddy and Biff. They're these tiny chihuahuas who are great actors. They're a little challenging to work with, a little demanding on set, but they have a great screen presence. Look, I knew we had to integrate them and build a story out of them because they have such a wonderful relationship and it's fun and they're great on camera. Gary Marshall on the commentary track for his seminal classic Georgia Rule said, "It's always good to have an animal to cut to." And I certainly agree with him about that. And so, but obviously, it is difficult to make a movie with two tiny dogs that need to be in certain places and do certain things. So if you've seen the movie, you know that we have different solutions for that to get around it. But
Incredible. God.
It's amazing.
Wow. Do you have does this have distribution yet? Do you have a release plan for it yet? Or is it still kind of up? Okay.
Well, as you know, it had its world premiere at Fantastic Fest. Earlier this year, and it was my first time going to Fantastic Fest. Amazing experience. Trying to get the movie seen was a really interesting process because I kind of learned an unexpected thing, which is that comedy is genre, and the kind of genre festivals were some of the people who were the most enthusiastic about the movie, and they were the ones who were maybe picking up what I was putting down. And so since then I played it at Beyond Fest, and I'm playing at a couple festivals in November. And then as for distribution, not yet. Hopefully we figure something out. To be continued. I definitely want people to be able to see it however they can.
Cool. Hell yeah.
I definitely want people to see it because I feel like this kind of absurdist movie is kind of making a comeback because there was I can't remember exactly the title. It was like 100 Beavers or what was that?
Hundreds of Beavers.
That's a great movie.
So good. And then also Rats came out at Fantasia that also isn't out yet but has a similar vibe of just like absurdist comedy, but how you do it in 2024.
I'm writing it down because my thing is every year, like I actually do a tweet where I'm like, what is the funniest movie you saw this year? Because there are so few, and I'm always trying to find the handful of comedy movies that really, really hit me personally in the kind of that really speak to me. And every year you get a couple. There was The Civil Dead. There's Inspector Ike. I remember one of the things that inspired me to make a movie like this was like being at Sundance in I think it was 2019, and I'd been there. I was making my fifth movie of the day. I saw many very high quality, very, very competent, well made dramas and documentaries. And then at 10 o'clock, this movie, I end up plopping down for this movie I know nothing about called Greener Grass. You know what I'm talking about.
I sure do.
So it was the premiere of Greener Grass, and the movie blows my hair back. And I'm like, this is like the feeling of seeing a really good comedy like that, especially after seeing a bunch of, again, good movies, but not comedies.
Right. Very
it's like
highbrow type stuff a lot of times.
It's like, for me, it was like euphoric, And honestly, for me, searching for the handful of like horror movies I really love every year is a similar process. You're looking for that needle in the haystack, the one that really speaks to you personally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, so, okay, you obviously love comedy, but are you also you're also a horror fan? Is that part of like your loves in cinema, the horror
Yes,
genre?
I'm an extremely omnivorous enjoyer of all types of media, and horror is definitely a big part of it. So yeah, every year I'm always looking for the handful of horror movies that I really, really, really fall in love with, and I try my best to see everything. And that's kind of always been the case.
Cool. So how did you get introduced to horror? Like, how did that start for you? Did it start in childhood? Were you older? Where did that kind of go?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I always was obsessed with horror even before I had the ability to watch horror movies because like Freddy and Jason were like these schoolyard mythical characters people talked about. You know, I was born in 87, and so Freddy and Jason already existed. And so you hear about them just as characters that already exist. And then so it became a thing of like, how do I access these movies? How do I see these movies? And I need to see them. And I remember I was staying at a family lake cabin, and there was like a corner general store that happened to have video rentals. And I must have been 8 or 7, and I just like begged my grandmother to let me rent Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. And I just like wore her down until I finally got to get that. And then after that, I think it might have been actually the same year that Wes Craven's New Nightmare came out. And that was the one that like really, for some reason, even though I knew nothing, I'd not watched the other movies in the series, I was able to pick up on exactly what Wes Craven's New Nightmare was saying and all the meta elements of it, I guess. Yeah. Because I was like, oh, I get that this is a character from another movie. Sure, that makes perfect sense. I'm 9 or whatever. And then like, I'm trying to think. And then right around the time, what came next was like these big things for me, which is like Scream came out, and that was huge for me. Like I rented Scream, and it was like my favorite movie at the time. I was obsessed with it. And also like Resident Evil, the video game, came out. And so like,
oh hell yeah,
yeah. And I was obsessed with all that stuff. I remember Scream 2 came out, and I was still very, very young, and I convinced my dad to go take me to see it in theaters. And the opening sequence ends with the scene of the guy getting stabbed through the bathroom stall through his head, and my dad's like, we're out of here. He dragged me out of the theater. I was so upset, and I had to go see Flubber instead.
Sorry. Vastly different film.
That's amazing.
Vastly different film.
But like eventually what happened was that I got old enough that my parents told the local video stores like, okay, he can rent whatever he wants to rent. Like, so I was able to have access to everything that the video stores happened to hold. And then of course what happens is you watch all that stuff, and then you're like, where's the harder stuff? What else?
What's next?
You get online and you start digging around to find the super nasty stuff. Which of course we all have that phase of learning about that stuff. Should I tell my guinea pig story?
Absolutely, you need to tell your guinea pig story immediately.
Okay, I'd watched everything that I possibly had at the video stores, and I'd known about this thing called Guinea Pig that existed. Now, mind you, I'm in Fargo, North Dakota, so I don't have access to anything. And file sharing, you can't download this stuff yet. You can't find big movie files or anything like that. And I am at a Best Buy with a couple friends, and for some reason, they have the Guinea Pig box set at Best Buy.
Wait, at the Best Buy?
It had just been released.
Was it like the late 90s or the early 2000s?
This was early 2000s.
Okay,
it was like, I think the company was called Unearthed Films, and they just licensed Guinea Pig, and they just put it out. And I was like, guys, holy shit, they have this crazy box set of this thing.
You were like me. Oh, you were like me with my friends. I was like, oh, look at this fucked up thing I found at Borders. And they're like, what is it? And I'm like, just wait. But you were worse.
Exactly. Ooh. And so I don't have any money. And I'm like, guys, there's this crazy thing called Guinea Pig here. And I kind of explain it as best I can to my friend. And one friend is like, well, we have to get it. And I'm like, well, I don't have any money. And I don't want to own this thing because I don't want to get in trouble. And my friend is like, I'm going to pay for it. And then we're going to watch it. So my friend is like, okay, I'll buy Guinea Pig and we'll all watch it together, right? So we're having a sleepover. And we watched the first 2. And yeah.
Okay, so you got there 2 of them.
We got through, and you got to imagine how unhappy we were. Like the looks on our, these are not the look. It's like, looking at everyone's faces.
So if anyone is unfamiliar with Guinea Pig, these are extreme torture porn looks like snuff film movies from Japan from the 80s, with names such as Flower of Flesh and Blood, Mermaid in a Manhole, Devil's Experiment. So these are fucked up movies by most people's standards. If anyone is unfamiliar,
I've never seen them.
Look them up. They're fucked up.
Particularly the first 2 are truly no fun at all. Very and so I think there's a certain thing where you realize oh, we're gonna have fun, watch this crazy stuff, and nobody's having fun because it's so. And what happens is,
this isn't fun. This is disgusting and depraved.
Yeah, and so my friend looks to me and he's like, Toby, you need to keep these Blu-rays, these DVDs. I'm not taking these home with me. Toby, these are yours now. And I'm like, oh, fuck. So I'm like, what do I do with this cursed object of these guinea pig DVDs that my parents, if they know what these are, they'll never look me in the eye again. And so what I did is I just put them on my shelf with everything else. I was just like hide it in plain sight, I guess. And then several years later, I sold them for a hefty markup after they were out of print.
Wow.
So that's that chapter of the horror journey. Anyway, what happened after that?
I thought I was the asshole in my friend group for that, but that takes the fucking cake.
Well, again, hey, I didn't force it. He was the one who insisted that we watch it and buy it.
No.
Yeah.
I love that you watched. Did you guys watch Devil's Experiment first and then thought, yeah, let's watch the next one? Wow. Devil's Experiment, everyone, is just a bunch of dudes beating up a woman for like 90 minutes.
It's horrible.
It's horrific. Like, these movies are not really adding much to the world in terms of cinema, but...
Have you seen them, Mary Beth? You've seen some of them?
I've seen parts. I can't stomach them.
Yeah, that's
I usually can stomach most stuff, but I think just watching a woman get her shit kicked in I just can't. I don't need it. You know,
we definitely felt like our souls had been pulled out of our bodies watching something.
I also you watched that as a sleepover. Were their parents home?
Yeah, they were sleeping in the other room. Yeah, they were.
I wonder what sleepovers are like now, because like I don't think they're the same as what we were fucking doing when we were children. I don't think so. They can't be, right? Like, I guess because you're not going to the video store or like sneaking things in.
It could be worse.
I don't know. It could be worse. I mean, who knows? Yeah. YouTube is fucking weird, so who knows what people are looking at.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So, in any case, so what happened? Okay, let me think about my horror journey after that. You know,
and they used to watch horror movies until recently. That would have been horror.
Looking for the most fucked up thing you can find loses its shine actually pretty quickly. And so...
It does.
I went to art school and became a huge film snob and rented stuff from the library. And you know, Netflix disc was hot at the time, so I was like I was going deep on, you know, Bergman and Godard and Truffaut and all that stuff, and Kurosawa. That was the phase I was in. I was in the high film snob territory. And then after graduating college, my love for horror kind of was reborn when I watched From Beyond, the Stuart Gordon movie.
Okay.
Yeah, like it was just on Netflix. Like Netflix streaming had just like come out, and it just happened to be sitting on there. And I watched From Beyond, and I realized that I missed this entire subcategory of like super super fun, crazy '80s horror movies. And so that kind of became my favorite flavor. Was all of that stuff. So I went deep on that. You know, all that type of movie.
I'll tell you, I mean, I grew up watching all of those 80s horror movies, but there's nothing like them. They're fun. They're at that perfect moment where like practical effects are like huge. And so they just captured a moment of horror, gore, comedy, just all of that sort of in one thing that I don't think it's replicated anymore.
It's very hard to find, but you know, there's... Yeah, obviously, because I'd seen Reanimator before, but I didn't know that there were these other movies that kind of hit the similar notes of just like delivering pleasure and surprise and fun to the audience while being crazy and ghoulish and gory and stuff. So like, yeah, I went deep on finding all the stuff I could find. You know, we were watching, you know, The Stuff and Society and Extro and all those.
Okay.
Society. I love Society. Extra was wild. I'm trying to remember. I've seen one of them, and I think it's the first one. Because I think someone released. I have it somewhere, a Blu-ray of it, and that was the first time I watched it. Because I'm a huge. I love Alien and all of the like Alien ripoffs that came out after that. And that one's fun. It's wild. It's a wild
I totally
film.
agree. I like movies again. That's one where it's like, are there three different completely separate movie ideas that you're like slamming together here? And there's something I like things that are unpredictable like that.
It's one of the reasons why I really enjoy the Italian horror films of that kind of decade, the 70s and 80s. There's one called Shocking Dark, which I think was marketed in Italy as Terminator 2. It has nothing to do with Terminator. It's more like we're taking Alien with a robot from like Terminator-esque, and we're kind of smashing it all together. It's so dumb, but it's fun.
I'm writing down Shocking Dark. You've sold me on that one.
It's wild. It's a wild Italian horror film. I think, it just, I love them. All the Italian shark movies from that decade are wild too.
What is the best Italian shark movie from that decade?
Oh gosh. Okay. It would have to be...
Is it not Zombie?
Do you count
No,
Zombie with the shark fight as that?
I mean, that is one of my favorite movies. But okay, so the last shark is absolutely ridiculous. I think that's what it's called. The problem is that they all have different names. Like the names changes based on where they're at or what release, but I believe it is called The Last Shark, and it is. I mean, I don't even know what to say about it. It's there's a moment where a man in a helicopter gets his legs bit off as the shark he's like holding on to like the leg of the helicopter, and his legs just get bitten off by the shark. And the sharks move in weird ways. Some of the scenes it's a tiger shark.
Move in mysterious ways.
Some scenes it's a tiger shark. Some scenes like they just use stock footage.
Yeah, it's whatever stock footage you've got. Oh shit! It's directed by. Hold on, now I'm looking it up. It's by the director of like a bunch of those like post-apocalyptic ones, like New Barbarians and Bronx Warriors and stuff. Okay.
Yes.
Oh wait.
Yes.
He's one of the credited directors on one of my favorite Italian movies, Sinbad of the Seven Seas, with Lou Ferrigno.
Oh.
I guess he co-directed it with Luigi
that.
Cozzi or something.
Okay. Just a blast. Just an absolute blast. Yeah. Okay. So, getting back to your sort of like horror history, though, did movies scare you as a kid? Were you easily frightened as a child with horror films?
I would say probably less than most people, but things definitely got to me. There are a few things that really, really got to me. Many of them have been covered on your show. Like I remember going downstairs to the kitchen, my sisters were watching It, and I'm like, oh sure, I can watch It. And then there's the scene where like the zombie creature pops out from the swamp, and then I go running, or you like get together with your friend for a sleepover, and you're like, let's see how much of this Jason movie on cable we can sit through without realizing that because it's on cable, the gore is going to be edited anyway, So for sure, I was seeking this stuff out and getting affected by it, but not as often, with maybe a strong exception of the thing we're talking about today.
Cool.
Gotcha.
So before we get to the thing you brought today, though, what was the last movie that truly scared you? Like recently-ish?
I mean, I'm going to be honest, it was Skinamarink. That scared the hell out of me. Because it reminded me so much of what it felt like to be a helpless child. Straight up. I watched it with my girlfriend in the middle of the night, and it was like before, and it was so terrifying at the time. And then you talk to other people, and they're like, what are you talking about? It's like, I don't know, I guess you had to be there. But her and I were both completely like frozen, horrified, with no idea what's going to happen. That was the last movie that like really scared me. Before that, I would actually say it was Anomalisa.
Oh, really?
Sometimes a movie will existentially upset you. Like I went with my friend. Oh,
true.
Yeah. I went with my friend Ian, and we went to like a pre-screening of it. And I walked out, and I was just like, I walked out, and I felt like I had been punched in the gut 50 times, and I was just like taking it very seriously. I was just like, is this just what's going to happen to all of us? Like it just like got under my skin somehow.
I love when movies can do that. Like in the moment, I hate it, but like afterwards, it's like, yeah, that movie really, really, really hit home.
Yeah.
But I love that Skinamarink is one because that's a very divisive film for a lot of people. I mean, Mary Beth absolutely loved it. I'm a fan-ish. Like it's one of those movies where like watching it, I was like not feeling it, but then afterwards, that walk from my basement to my room in the dark house, because I rarely ever turn on the light when I'm walking. Like I was like, ooh, I'm uncomfortable, and so I would turn on the light and get in my bedroom and leave the hall light on, because I was like, this is it's one of those. It's weird. It's a weird experience.
Yeah, it's like a primordial feeling that no other movie has properly picked up. And also, I just love that a movie like that became such a talking point and became popular. The fact that like we were getting like, what was it, a $15,000 essentially like a slow cinema movie playing in like mainstream theaters. Like what an incredible thing that is.
Yeah, it grossed like $1 million, which is insane for that. Amazing. For like an art house weird experiment. Like I love it. And now he's working with A24 on his next movie. So that's
I'll be there day one.
I will also
I will
be there
too.
Day one.
I will too. He's a delight.
He's a delight. So Toby, we have talked about all sorts of amazing things, but what did you bring with you today for us to discuss?
Today I brought a very specific episode of the beloved TV series Beyond Belief, Fact or Fiction that I saw at a very young age.
So this is season 1, episode 2, everyone. And in this episode, it features cases The Viewing, The Subway, Kid in the Closet, Justice is Served, and The Tractor. And I had never watched this show before, so if anyone's unfamiliar, Guy hosts it. He talks about a bunch of things, and they tell you if it was real or not at the end. And I realized that I'll explain more later, but I have actually seen the show before, but with a different host.
See,
but anyway,
that's a major aspect, because the show is very associated with Jonathan Frakes. But the first season is James Brolin.
It's James Brolin.
Yeah, and it's just like I was watching it, and my girlfriend is just like, someone check this man's pulse. Like the comparison of the charisma brought to the table of James Brolin in this compared to Frakes in the Frakes seasons is unbelievable.
It really is. It truly is. But oh my god,
I was okay. Before I want to keep on this track just briefly, because I had never seen this as well for the most part. Although I guess I had seen like maybe it was on television and I walked past it, because I do remember the little interstitial where it's like, it has like the logo and they're like, was this real or was this made up? And I was like, okay, that does ring a bell for me. But I had always associated this with Frakes. Is that his last name?
Yep. Yeah.
And so when I saw Brolin, and I'm like, this man is very sleepy. He's like an old grandfather kind of telling you a story. Like it was a wild experience. But take us back. How familiar, before you watched this, before we get to your Scarred for Life story, how familiar were you with the show? Was this something that you I mean, I guess it was only episode 2, so it would have only been one episode before. But what was your history with the show? I guess to start off with.
Sure. I mean, look, all I did as a kid was play video games and watch TV. And so I was really tracking what was playing, and I was watching, this is on Fox. So it's like, oh yeah, I'm watching The Simpsons. And so I'm getting ads for this during The Simpsons. This is probably like the When Animals Attack era of Fox, where they're just like trying weird programming stuff.
Yeah.
Trying to get me to go. And so a concept like Beyond Belief, Fact or Fiction is kind of not too dissimilar from one of those, where they're like trying to get you with like a gimmick, right? And so it was already on my radar from watching advertisements. And so it probably, I don't know what night it played, but I was fully aware. I was probably planning my day around it. And this was just the second episode. So I definitely had watched the previous episode and thought that I was safe to tune in and watch the next episode. And I will say, like, I didn't really watch it that much after this, partly because it terrified me, and also partly because it was harder to find after this, even though the Frakes seasons are much more entertaining. But I don't know when you want to talk about this, now or later, but the show ended up becoming meaningful in my life later again. It had I have a whole second wave in the recent years with Beyond Belief.
Okay,
cool.
So let's start with your Scarred for Life story. What was it about this episode, and which vignette, which short film of it terrified you? Was it all of it, or was it a particular one? So let's start with how you saw it and why this was your pick.
Yeah, it was definitely a specific one for sure. I remember I was watching it. I don't know why. I would sometimes watch. I was pretty young. I was under 10, I think, at this time, or close, maybe 7 or 8 or maybe something like that. And for some reason, sometimes I don't even remember why, I would watch TV shows on a tiny TV in my parents' bedroom. Like they would be in the kitchen, like watching stuff, and then I would like saddle up in their bedroom on the floor watching something on this like 13-inch TV. And I tuned into Beyond Belief, and the one that of course got me was the Kid in the Closet segment. And what happened was, it's all fine and good, except that at the end when they say that it's real, and we'll describe it in more depth, but it's like when I was told that impossible thing was real, it absolutely destroyed me. I couldn't handle it, and there's no way to get more information about it. So I was just left to ponder what that meant, how it could be real, what it could be, and it absolutely disturbed me to my core. And I carried that around for years. I could not handle it. I couldn't compute how something like that could have happened and been real. And the episode provides very little information.
Yeah, it's not a lot of context. I skipped to the end. I'm like, oh, okay, there'll be an explanation. There's like, no, it's based on a thing. And then I just stopped. And I was like, what the fuck do you mean? Like, you want to give me some more information on that? Like a little more context?
And then like later seasons, they say, oh, go ahead.
No, I just love, because we get James Brolin with his bushy eyebrows going, this one's real. Did we get you? Like, I'm just like, this is it's hilarious watching it as an adult now.
And then like Yeah, I don't know what the hell. And because later they say a little more. They're like, a similar thing did occur. Or like, this is based on a story of something that happened in Maine in 1984. But this one, they give you nothing. And so you, as a child, you're just, it's horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't imagine watching this as a child, because you said you were probably, this came out in 97, so you're probably 10, is that?
I was probably 10, yeah.
So I can't imagine watching this, because I guess my correlation would be I used to watch like Unsolved Mysteries back in the day, and those would also creep me out too, because they were presented as real, and sometimes they would dig into like some of the magic, quote unquote, behind what happened, but like a lot of times it was just this ephemeral story that you would just see, and then it would become part of your like consciousness. So like this kind of reminded me of that in that way.
I mean, the show is quite a bit like Unsolved Mysteries, I would say.
Yeah.
You know, the reenactment, the tone of the reenactments are very similar. It's just that half of them are just weird made up stories that are trying to trick you. And then half of them are real stories that are maybe also trying to trick you.
What a weird premise for a show. I feel like, what a 90s thing. Like, ooh, is it fake? Is it real? We don't know. You'll find out. And it's very funny to me that is a
and like, you know, it holds up. I think they brought it back for like some seasons in Germany or something recently. I have no idea how that works, but it's true. And Frakes came back for those as well.
Oh my god! Well, this would have terrified me as a kid because I was terrified of closets because of Poltergeist, and I have like I'm better now in my 30s, but I couldn't have my closet open. I couldn't I had to have my parents like move my bed from facing my closet. Like the closet was just like monsters were in there. So this, if I had seen this as a child, like that's a primordial fear of like you go into the closet and something takes you and then you are gone forever. Like not even just like gone, like disappeared, like raptured out of your clothing, because the boy in this, like it's a little boy who's in there, and they open the closet and it's just his clothes and his shoes are there and he is gone. And like that would have sent young me into a spiral. So, like,
that's exactly what happened to me. And then they tell you that it really happened.
Yeah, and then I would have been like, holy shit, I never can have closets. I can't do it. Like, closets are portals to other worlds. Like, I was convinced that closets were like portals to like a boogeyman dimension and shit like that. Like, I don't fuck with closets.
Absolutely could be.
And then I found out I was bisexual, so like that might be happening to you. Like, you know, the weird, like, but you know, who knows? Who knows the psychology behind all that? Anyway.
What's funny to me is like, so I was like, okay, I'm going to play a game with this, because I when I first started watching it, I did not know that this was like, we were interspersing some fake, quote unquote, with some quote unquote real ones. And so when I sat down to watch this, I was like, oh, okay, I see what we're doing here. So I'm going to like make my guesses. I was wrong on every single one.
They got you.
They did, because like I thought of all of them, the ones that were the most like easy to explain away would have been the last two. The band that was attempting what the Justice is Served, where the guy is going crazy on the stage. And I'm like, okay, this guy could have been easily trying to, knowing that they have a lot of evidence against him, trying to basically show that he's crazy, quote unquote. And so then he gets put away for that, as opposed to, you know, that. And then the tractor, I'm like, okay, well, you know, it makes sense that maybe someone fell off the tractor and almost rolled over her and someone ended up saving her. I was like, okay, I can kind of see that maybe if you squint at this, like maybe you can see some of how like it's connected. And then when I found out that those are the two fake ones, I was like, okay, let me pull up some history on this and see where they pulled this from, because I was so frustrated at the end that it was sort of like, yep, these were fake. These are based on a true story. And I'm like, you just gonna say that? You're not gonna give us anything more? And I think that's like the difference between watching this as an adult versus watching it as a kid, because as a kid I would have been like eating it up, and it would have been as it probably terrified you. It's like, that was real? And then as an adult I'm like, okay, where's the receipts? I need to see this.
Define real.
Right.
Someone on YouTube wrote a comment about explaining what happened in the Monster in the Closet episode. There's no source. It's just a YouTube comment. But they said the kid did run away from home and was found at a friend's house. There was a secret passage in the closet.
Yep.
And he took off his clothes and like went to the attic to change clothes, then ran away. So less exciting than like a monster.
See, I read that and I remember thinking just like, oh, it must have been a very, very pre-planned gag then that this person was doing on purpose to like scare someone or something. And then I read other stuff being like, oh no, that kid just liked to run away a lot. Like, I have no idea. But I guess a similar event did occur. It's funny you mention, coming up with trying to like test yourself and see what you get correctly. Because in recent years, my friends and I have gotten really, really into just throwing on an episode of Beyond Belief, always the Frakes seasons, just for fun, just like we're hanging out and it's like let's throw on a Beyond Belief. And for my girlfriend's birthday a few years ago, we threw a competitive Beyond Belief party where everyone there had to guess, and then the winner would get a medal. To who was the best at guessing these, and also the person who got the worst score also got a medal.
That would be me.
But it was quite fun.
That's amazing. I think that would be a fun party because I had a good time just by myself trying to figure out, is this real or is this fake? Because like the first 3 stories are just, I mean, maybe to a lesser degree, The Kid in the Closet, but particularly the first 2 are just, it's a classic ghost story. And so it's like, we have The Viewing where it's like a kid is home alone at night. I want to talk about that in a moment though, where he's like, he's with his parents own a mortuary and he's there with the dead body, yada, yada, yada. And the man came to drop off his own. Like it's like a ghost story that we would tell around a campfire. And then the subway as well, where it's like you got on the subway and it's going crazy. And then they end up getting home and saving the life of their neighbor. I'm like, it's a classic ghost story. So I was sitting here and I'm just thinking, no, those can't possibly be the ones that they're quote unquote basing on true stories. Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And I think that the ghost story thing is true. A lot of them are like, they're very much like fables or something. Mm-hmm. And that's where a lot of these things seem to be drawn from. And that definitely continues as it goes on. And then, but also as it goes on, they try to like, a lot of the fake ones, they like try to write the most boring thing you can think of and then try to trick you that way. Okay. Like there's one in a later season where it's like, oh, it's a magical horse who can see the future by like moving things around. It's like, and it's just like, what the fuck?
That's absurdist. I do like that. One thing that surprised me about The Viewing is who directed it. It's
I was
DJ
about to mention that. Yeah, I was watching the yesterday, and the most notable thing about that to me is like, seeing that DJ Caruso of Disturbia and Triple X2 fame directed The Viewing was a shocker, especially because if you're watching these shorts back to back, that was not the most it was not the most like noticeably like well directed of the shorts.
No,
it was not particularly stylish at all. And yet he's the one, everybody went on to have like good careers, but he's the one who like, made these big mainstream movies with Shia LaBeouf in them.
Yeah. I was surprised to see that. And at first I was like, because his name wasn't DJ, it was David James or something like that. I don't remember what his, but I was like, there can't be 2 DJ Carusos. Mm-hmm. And so I had to look it up and I was like, holy shit. But also the fact that it starred Eric Christian Olsen, who would go on to be in Fired Up, and I'm trying to think what else that he was in.
Not another teen movie.
Another teen movie. Yeah. One of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
I do love that movie. And Dumb and Dumberer.
Oh my god.
I was like, okay, we have a little bit of like future talent in these episodes, and so it was like I was trying to figure out if that was a continuation in the rest of the episodes or the rest of the shorts in that episode. And I did see that the guy that played Reginald, the dead guy in The Viewing that comes back, was played by Rob Howard's dad, Rance Howard.
Oh, really?
Was Reginald. Yeah.
Hold on, I'm looking that up now, because there was also an actor. I wonder if it's the same actor who. Rance Howard. I mean, in my household, he's most known as Sheridan's dad in Babylon 5. But he also is in Psycho 1998, which we just watched recently. So, this guy gets around.
And his wife, Beverly, in the show was his wife, Jean Spiegel Howard. So Ron Howard's parents were in this episode.
Wow.
Both of them.
That was by design. That's crazy.
Wild.
Sorry, now I'm looking at Rancis Howard's credits, and I find it very, very funny that the thing I most know him from is Beyond Belief, Babylon 5, and Psycho 1998, because he's been in all kinds of stuff. But it's like, that's as far as I'm concerned, those are his main credits.
Yeah, exactly. Psycho 98.
Yeah, we just watched all the Psycho movies, and of course we had to end on that one. I'd never seen any of the sequels.
Oh, hell yeah.
Okay, so we covered Psycho 2 on the podcast, and I was surprised at how much I enjoyed that one.
Mm-hmm. It's my opinion.
I've not seen any others.
It is my opinion that all four, well, of course the first one's good, but all four of the Psycho movies are good and worth watching. That's my personal opinion. I think 3 rules. It's like a Giallo movie or something. 3, it's like a totally different thing. And then 4 is like a super weird, upsetting incest movie.
Wow.
I mean, it's not, it's implied and all that stuff, but
right.
it goes places you don't expect from, like, it's creepy and unsettling in different ways that I was like, oh, this is interesting. The 4 is the weakest of all of them, but still worth watching. And then, of course, 99, the Gus Van Sant one is what it is.
It is what it is.
That was one of the last movies I saw in a small theater that was in a mall in Bellevue, Nebraska. And me and my 3 other friends were the only 4 people in the movie theater. And so we like sat at like different rows. We just to have fun. So like that is what, anytime someone brings up that movie, that is what I think of, is us sitting at the ends of each row because we were the only 4 people in the audience.
Look, there's nothing I love more than having control over the movie theater, having full dominion over what happens in there.
Okay, so did you watch more of the Beyond Belief after this episode terrified you? It sounded like you didn't for a while.
I didn't for a while, partly because I was absolutely horrified, and partly because, like a lot of Fox shows at the time, it was a little hard to find. I think it eventually landed on Sci-Fi Channel, where it was maybe around a little bit more consistently. But I had trouble keeping up with it. It wasn't easy to access or find on air at the time. So I kind of let it go until the last couple of years where like the whole thing is on YouTube. So like that's where I've been keeping up with it now. But I pretty much, I definitely wanted to watch it, but usually couldn't find it.
So you mentioned that this became important to you later in life. Is it because of what you mentioned already with your friends, or is there more of a story with how it's become important to you now?
No, that was it. Yeah, it was. We started to get this, like, we had this fun thing where like every time we'd hang out, we'd throw on a Beyond Belief, and then it culminated in this great party. And then I also got a Jonathan Frakes cameo that I gave as a gift, where I mentioned Beyond Belief, and he played the character in the cameo, which was a lot of fun. He was I think he was amused to get a Beyond Belief cameo request.
That's so cool.
That's amazing.
I love that.
Were you at these parties? Did you know which ones were fake or real, or how good were you at sussing them out? I would never know, and we would certainly never know in advance. And a lot of it was because the thing about it is, it's like you have to it's like a metagame where you're like you have to put you have to put yourself in the shoes of the people making it and writing it. And because you have to figure out where they're coming from and trying to trick you. It's kind of like, I don't know, you could say finding the DK coins in Donkey Kong Country 2. You have to think about what the designer would be thinking and kind of go from there. But even then, it's like almost impossible. So like when we did the competitive Beyond Belief hangout, I was somewhere in the middle of the pack. I was not really that consistent.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I was going to ask you, Mary Beth, was this the first time you'd ever seen one of these two, or did you have?
So my only relationship with this was compilation videos of Jonathan Frakes going, "Gotcha. No, sir. Gotcha. Fooled you." And my husband would show them to me when I was stoned, and they would make me giggle nonsensically. And they'd also do his intros, like just compilations of all his introductions that sound like hot nonsense, and also like, "Gotcha." So I knew who he was and what this was through that, but didn't connect that these were the same thing again at all. I was like, wait, the cadence of which he's saying "gotcha" feels familiar, but like a robot's doing it instead of someone with an actual personality. And then when I saw that Jonathan Frakes hosted the rest of the season, it's like, okay, I get it. Yep. They found the right man with the right tone, other than like it's not robotic James Brolin, who did not really seem to know what he was going for in his role as host of this television program.
Yeah, and what's funny though is like he's doing all the same stuff that Frakes would do. He does that silly puzzle with the duck and the rabbit. Like there's always something like that.
At the very beginning, I was like,
yeah, there's always like a weird like visual gag that'll happen where Frakes will like roll up and he'll be like, "Look at this painting. What if I turn it upside down? Can you believe it?" Stuff like that. So the dialogue is the same, but the thing is, when I was watching James Brolin, I was like, I cannot believe this man was ever an actor. That's how stiff it was.
Yeah, I know. I was like, wait a second. What? Yeah. Uh-huh.
I was getting like secondhand embarrassment watching him. Like, he does not seem like he wants to be here. Was he only in the first season?
Yeah. And then Frakes takes over. And again, Frakes, whether or not he wanted to be there, he did a good job at least making it like fun to watch. And like I'm sure that they just record all of the whole season in like one afternoon or something.
I mean, yeah, because like it obviously he can just be filmed anywhere, right? So like just running them back to back, it's cheaper that way, I could imagine.
Yeah.
Oh God, yeah.
Wow. So I guess have you watched all of the episodes? Have you seen everything?
I wouldn't say every single episode, but we definitely got to a point where we were throwing them on random. And I think that it got to the point where we were starting to become harder to find ones we hadn't seen. So if I were to guess, I'd probably say I've seen maybe 75% of the episodes of the show.
Do you have a favorite episode or favorite segment?
Gosh.
Putting you on the spot.
Oh man. Oh God. There's one. Holy God. I'm trying. This one I would have to look it up, but there's a couple of like really crazy ones. There's one where a guy like sees himself as a superhero. Hold on. I'm going to take a moment to look this up here. We can edit this out.
What?
Magic Mighty Man. It's from season 2, and it's a guy who visualizes himself as a hero named Magic Mighty Man. That one I really like. I do really like the one about the mystical future-telling horse, because it's such... You spend most of the time watching that short just watching a horse in real time nudging objects with its snout as it slowly puts together predictions, and I'm like, you got to respect something that disregards the audience's time to that degree and puts it on national television. So those are a couple of my favorites. Obviously, to me, this one is a nostalgic favorite because it scared the shit out of me as a kid, and it has Elizabeth Warren in it for some reason. There's a character named Elizabeth Warren, and they keep naming her Elizabeth Warren. They say it over and over again. It's like, what the hell? I remember watching that with friends and just having a laugh, like every time they said it, just being like, so this one is like a favorite of mine in that way, but it's not as fun to sit through and watch as some of the other ones. The camp factor isn't quite as heightened yet.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right.
Man.
Do we want to wrap up now and give a rating? Is that a 5?
It sounds good to me.
All right, Terry, you're up first. How many disappearing brothers out of 5 do you give this? Are we doing episode? Are we doing segment? What are we thinking? We'll go with your heart, honestly. Just go with your heart.
Okay.
Lead with your heart.
Here's the thing. I think overall, not my favorite one. I'm curious. It made me curious to watch more. I really want to see some of the ones with Frakes, just because he just dropped the energy down so much for me. I was like, this isn't working. I think that this is the perfect example of allowing a show to sort of figure out what it wants to be and not canceling it after the first season. Because I am curious to see how this progresses, because I love the premise behind it. I really wanted to know more about what were they basing it off of? What about this was true? How much of it, and it kind of frustrates me now. I was searching, and the only one I could find anything on of the ones was the kid in the closet, about how the kid might have gotten through the ceiling and all this other stuff.
Yeah, the wiki's not particularly useful.
No. And I immediately went to Wikipedia, and that was absolutely useless. And then I went to the fandom wiki, and it was equally useless. Yep. It had a little bit more plot synopsis, which the Wikipedia page was missing, but that's about it. And so I was like, I want to know what about this was real enough that they could have made a story out of it.
Yeah.
But for the kid in the closet, I really enjoyed the viewing, just because I love a good ghost story like that. I knew where it was going. I knew how it was going to, unfold, but I still enjoyed it. I did like the kid in the closet one. I think it also has kind of a moral on it. Stop being a fucking bully, otherwise you're going to get vanished by
asshole.
and believe kids.
Yeah, and one thing I forgot to mention is also believe it or not, there were periods of time in my life when I was bullied, and like watching the scenes where the kid is being bullied by like a group of children. That to me is what's scary now. Like it viscerally takes me back to the feeling of being bullied. I'm like, God, this is very upsetting.
And one of them is his brother.
Yeah,
I was gonna say
up.
like the brother is one of like the bully group, and I'm just like, that was fucking scary to me. Of just not even your family was like safe even at school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was the part that felt real to me. It's like, oh God, don't take me back.
Yeah, I do think that those scenes are filmed really well too, because it felt like a classic bullying scene from like the 80s that we would see in movies, where it's like a whole bunch of kids, and the moment you get into your house and you close the door, you're safe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, with this poor kid, you're not, because your brother is a fucking dickhead.
Yeah.
So like, I do like that there's like two morals in this. One, don't be a dick, and the other one being listen to kids.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
Because like, he's trying to tell them. Granted, he's talking about a monster in his closet. However, listen to those kids. But yeah, so I think the kid in the closet one is I'm going to say 3.5. What are we using?
Disappearing brothers.
Disappearing brothers. I'm going to use 3.5. I'm going to cut that asshole brother in half and say 3.5 disappearing brothers for that particular episode. As a whole, not the strongest one for me, but it does make me want to go watch some more. What about you, Mary Beth?
So I'm going to give it 3.5 as well. It definitely had a vibe of like an old school Goosebumps episode too, which I was super into. It felt like this could very much be an episode of Goosebumps or a Goosebumps story. And again, never having watched this before, it just gave me that vibe of what I used to watch as a kid with these kind of like, again, morality tales almost about kid. But this one was interesting because it wasn't like, it was from the perspective of the mom instead of the kid, really.
And the narrator like pops in randomly, like halfway through. It's like, oh, there's a narrator.
I know. Yeah. This will change our lives forever. But it's really, and it's interesting to see how these shows do such a story so quickly, because they're all like different lengths. You don't really, and I think there's 5 or 6 in here. 1, 2.
Yeah, they always have 5, which is like, that's a large number.
That is a large number. As a large number, and also just like a lot to write and so it's kind of impressive what they were able to create. So I want to give it a 3.5, solid 3.5. I wouldn't be mad to check out a couple more of these, just like randomly, on YouTube.
I think the way you're doing it, Toby, with having like a party and having people get that is a great idea. Yeah, that is a great idea.
Toby, you have the final word. How many disappearing
let me think
brothers?
Here. I will give this episode / the Kid in Closet segment also about a 3.5. I think that it's like good, but could be better. The series on the whole, I'll give a 4. There are a lot more entertaining episodes that have given me a lot more joy than this one. But of course, this was one that scarred me for life, so it had to be what we talked about.
Hell yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us to talk about this TV show that I'm curious about and I'm going to have to go watch, and also to talk about your upcoming movie. So where can our listeners find you? And the floor is yours to plug away. What festivals? Do you have any more festivals that it's going to be playing at? The floor is yours. Yeah,
so you can find me on social media at Toby Jones. That's where I'll be posting any and all creative project related updates, including whatever happens next with AJ Goes to the Dog Park. It's playing at Lake County Film Festival and Cucaloris Film Festival in November, and after that, TBD. We'll have to see kind of what happens, but I'm hoping that people get it'll be available for people to see some way or another, and I hope anyone who's into surreal, absurd comedy checks it out.
Hell yeah. Listeners, you've heard from us. We want to hear from you. What was your experience with Beyond Belief? Have you seen this episode? What was your favorite episode? Which episode should we watch? Terry and I, as we embark on a journey on watching Beyond Belief. Let us know by sending us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com. Or you can reach out to us directly on social media. I am at MB McAndrews on Twitter and at MB.McAndrews on Instagram.
And I'm at Gaily Dreadful everywhere.
And of course, are you following the podcast everywhere? We are at Scarred Podcast on Twitter and Blue Sky, and at Scarred for Life Podcast on Instagram.
Please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe.
Thank you to Eric Power for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thank you everyone for listening. Please stay safe and sane out there, but most of all, stay creepy.
And until next time.